It's the month of Teves, and like we've done the past 2 months, we brought on the legend himself, the incomparable genius, my dear brother-in-law, Rabbi Shmuly Botnick, to help us sort out the deeper meanings of this month, the mysteries, the secrets, the ideas behind the month of Teves. There's not really a lot going on. If you look at your calendar in this month, you see that there's a fast day, and that's really all there is. But of course, Rabbi Botnick has a way of peeling the layers of the onion and showing us what's really going on, what's the mystery, what's the secret, what do we actually know, and what can we speculate about this month. So I'm looking forward to this. I did get the notes like I got last week, but unfortunately it was mostly indecipherable to me. So we'll have to make do. And I'm relying a lot on Rabbi Botnick today. I think he's relying on me, so it might be a total disaster. But welcome, Rabbi Botnick. It's great to have you back.
Thanks so much, Rabbi Wilby. Yeah, so I hope it won't be a disaster. We're going to try our best. I will say I'm a little biased about the month of Teves, and that's because my birthday falls out smack in the middle of the month of Teves. So
That's right. That's right. Happy birthday. Well, Rabbi Botnick was born, I believe, on January 1st, a couple of strokes after midnight. I always say that his family was a family of accountants and not lawyers. That would never be allowed to happen. But alas, was that right?
Well, because we're lawyers, we turned the clock back a couple of minutes. Anyways, okay. Yeah, so Teves it's kind of my month. Like you said, it doesn't seem to have a lot going for it, certainly not in a positive way. But as we've seen in the past, that's usually a good thing, because that means there's plenty of room to explore, plenty of not yet discovered material, which we hope we could tap into. So let's jump into it.
Okay.
We always first focusing on the tribe that the month corresponds with, right? So we know already there's 12 tribes, there's 12 months, and the Arizal has his own calculation as to which month lines up with which tribe. And the month of Teves is going to be the month of Dun. That's the Shevet of Dun. He is, I think, the oldest of Bilhah's children. Is that right, Rabbi Wilby?
Don't test me on these things.
Right. So, you know what I mean to say is he's not
tribe of Dan.
So he's not one of the.
Yes.
He's not a child of Rachel or Leah. He's a child of Bilhah.
Bilhah's oldest kind of surrogate son. Yes, the surrogate son of Rachel. Yes, Dan and Naphtali.
Okay.
So he's the tribe of the month. Okay. Now,
the zodiac sign for the month of Teves is a Gedi. A Gedi is a baby goat. An adult goat is called a Seir, and a Gedi is a baby goat, and that is that is the zodiac sign that governs in the month of Teves. So we're going to have to explore what is the significance of a Gedi. So far, we got to figure out what's unique about Dun, what's special about a Gedi, and I don't think we've discussed this in previous Shurim, but also every month has a letter, a specific letter that's associated with it, a letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the letter of the month of Teves is an ayin, okay? An ayin, and also, and this we did discuss last month, there is a Shem Havaya, right? One of the 12 formulas of Hashem's ineffable name, Yud Hey Vav Hey, can be rearranged in 12 different ways. And this time around, the month of Teves, the arrangement is, hold on, let me figure this out. It's going to be a Hey, Yud, Hey, Vav. But that, you don't have to remember that. The Arizal, for every single one of these formulas, he derives it from a pasuk. Okay, so he'll say that you could see this formula can be found, hinted to in a certain pasuk. So the pasuk that he finds this specific shame in is the pasuk Gadlu LaHashem Iti Urerom Lashmo Yachta, which we say every time we take the Sefer Torah out of the Aron Kodesh, right? It's a very famous pasuk. So he says, if you look at the final letters of the words LaHashem Iti Uneromima Shemo, you'll get the last letter of LaHashem is a Hey, Iti is a Yud, Uneromima is a hey. Yachtav is a vav. Okay, so we're finding Teves being hinted to in the pasuk Gadlu laHashem iti uneromima shmo yachtav. Which, Rabbi Wolbe, do you want to give a translation?
Yeah, Gadlu means to make God great.
Make God great with me, and let's lift him up together, right?
Yeah, uplift, yes. His name,
uplift
together, yes, together.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so a lot to unpack here. Dun, goat, letter ayin, and the verse about lifting God up together. Can you think, in your prodigious genius, Rabbi Wolbe, can you think of any sort of connection just on the spot between all these four different...
Not really. It seems like a mystery. The letter ayin, I know that you have a thing. You have an affinity for that letter. We've heard that in the past.
Very good. You remember that. Yeah.
The letter ayin. Okay, that's the letter that corresponds to number 70. I remember we talked a lot about the letter ayin and the letter aleph and Aaron and the swapping and the garments.
Very good.
And
that's all
that
a
mystery.
Year ago.
So right. I know that the goat, the baby goat, tribe of Dan. And this verse of making God glorious together, it's a total mystery. Right. It's a total mystery. So, what do we have over here?
We're going to debunk this together. All right, so what happens in the month of Teves? You mentioned earlier that it's not all that much, and even what does happen seems to be pretty negative. That's right. So primarily there's this fast day coming up. Okay, what is that? And it's going to be in very soon, right? On Tuesday. So today's Friday. This coming Tuesday, we're going to be fasting. It's one of my favorite fasts because it's really short. How the Shkia here is like 5:20, so it's basically skipping breakfast and lunch, which I do pretty often anyways. But it is a fast day, and it's a serious fast day. It's kind of biblical. I mean, it's not biblical because it's not explicitly in the Torah, but the occurrence that it's commemorating is found in Malachim, right? It's found in the prophets. And what that is that the Babylonians surrounded the walls of Yerushalayim on that day, on the 10th day of Teves, is when they lay siege on Yerushalayim. It was a year and change later that they broke down the walls of Yerushalayim, right? And that we fast as well. That's called Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. And then it's 3 weeks later that they set fire to the Beis HaMikdash, right? I think I got that right.
Yeah, so we have different stages of the destruction of Jerusalem, destruction of the temple, and the 10th of Teves corresponds to the siege, the encirclement of the walls of Jerusalem. They lay siege to it, and then they break through the siege, they breach the walls, and then they destroy the temple. And those successive stages, so to speak, of the destruction of the First Commonwealth of Jerusalem and the temple are each marked by fast days.
That's right. Okay, so that's the Sabbath days, but we are taught that's not the only bad thing that happened in Teves. Leading up to the 10th day of Teves, the 2 days prior to that, the 8th day and the 9th day also have their own unfortunate occurrences. I hope I get this one right. So on the 8th day of Teves, we are taught a rather strange thing happened. The King Talmai, who was, I think, a successor of Alexander the Great. Rabbi Wolbe is going to help me out here. He was one of the successors.
That's right.
Yes.
There
was a couple, like 3 of them. But he got like a portion of Alexander's territory, and he demanded of the Sanhedrin, the leading 72 rabbis of the Jewish people at the time, to translate the Torah into Greek. And this, we are told, was a great tragedy. The Gemara tells us that the world fell into darkness. There was choshech for 3 days as a result of this decree. So this wasn't a small thing. Spiritually, this was a very big deal that we were compelled to translate the Torah into Greek. And we don't fast, per se, on the 8th day, but it is, we don't fast on the 8th day, but it is something which we mark as kind of a blemish on our history that we had to go through that. Now, an obvious question, which has been asked by many, is what is wrong? I mean, there is a very successful company called ArtScroll that does this for a living, right? They translate the Torah not only into English, into French, Spanish, maybe some Russian, right? What exactly is the problem with what happened there? and I hope to come to some sort of understanding of that as well. Okay, that's on the 8th day. On the 9th day, I didn't see this brought down other than the Mishnah Berurah, so I'm sure there's earlier sources for this, that Ezra passes away. Ezra HaSofer, who played a significant role in our history. This was following the destruction of the first temple. He was the one who led the exodus back to Eretz Yisrael for the rebuilding, or for the building of the second temple. So that's Ezra. So he passes away on the 9th day, and we are taught that that is also obviously a very sad episode. And again, we don't fast, but these three things kind of, one follows the other. There's this translation of the Torah into Greek, Ezra's passing, and then the siege that they lay around Yerushalayim on the 10th day. And you have to ask yourself, they sound really random. These three things, the only common denominators, they're all sad and unfortunate, but like, what in the world is the connection between siege, Greek, and Ezra? Alright, so we have to find common threads between a lot of things right now. There's the goat, the letter ayin, the tribe of Dan, the verse, the siege, the translation, and Ezra. Sounds like fun?
And if I'm not mistaken, these other days, so day 8, that is the day that they translated the Torah, the Septuagint, the translation of the 70, and day 9, which is the death of Ezra, they're also fast days. Is that right?
So,
they're just fast days that only individuals.
We don't observe. So I think
they're technical
and
fast
the
days.
Shulchan Aruch brings down
all
all these like random fast days that we don't observe. I guess he's not saying you have to observe them, just saying like these are days that if you're in the mood of fasting, like choose these ones or something. But I think that's on the list. 8 and 9, or maybe one of those two for sure, is on the list.
I believe both of them. 8, 9, and 8, then of course 10, whichever one fasts.
Yeah, so go for it. It will be. I challenge you to fast 8, 9,
and 10. You could be a Muslim for a couple of days. Ramadan.
Yeah.
Well, it comes right after January. This year it comes after January, so everyone wants to, fulfill their New Year's resolution. So maybe fast a couple of days, lose a couple of pounds.
All right.
Anyhow, okay.
So let's explore first the most prominent of these three occurrences, and that will be the siege that was laid around Yerushalayim by the Babylonians. So the Babylonians are the first of 4 exiles, right? So there's 4 different galuyos. There's the Galus Bavel. There's the Galus Paras Umadai. That's what happens with the Purim story. That's Achashverosh. Galus Yavan, which we just spoke a lot about. That was Chanukah time. And then the Galus that we're currently in, which is Galus Edom.
Yes, and Galus, we'll just translate that as exile, right? We're talking about these are the 4 exiles of the Jewish people. Is that right? How you would translate it?
Yeah, 4 exiles of Jewish people, yeah. So this was the very first step of Galus Babel. So just to give this like something of a deeper perspective, the Babylonian army surrounding Yerushalayim means, what it really means is the very first step of the very first Galus has just happened. Okay, so right away there you start seeing that there's kind of more to this than what meets the eye. There's something very significant happening in our history. Now, we are taught that the 4 exiles correspond to 4 averos. Okay, so there's the 3 capital crimes. The 3 capital crimes are... Rabbi, we take it away.
No, the 3 cardinal sins. A lot of capital crimes.
Okay, cardinal sins. All right, that's a better word.
There's 3 sins that you have to be willing to die and not transgress. The 3 general categories of transgressions. And those are murder, of course. Mm-hmm. Someone says, murder someone or I kill you, you have to bite the bullet. Idolatry, and the whole suite of sexual crimes. That's right.
So, what we're taught is that the first 3 exiles correspond to those 3. So, Bavel is Avodah Zarah, idolatry. Paras Umadai is sexual immorality. So, people don't even realize this. This kind of goes unmentioned in the Purim story, but sexual immorality actually plays a very big role. The party, the Achashverosh's party, one of the big problems with it was there was a lot of immorality going on. It wasn't just the food; it was the company. So Paras Umadai is very much associated with that. Yavan is Shvichas Damim. Okay, it's murder. So those are the three, that's the lineup. And then goes Edom, very interestingly, with one we're currently in, the Sfarim tell us, Sfas Emes says this, is Lashon Hara, which the Gemara tells us that Lashon Hara is as bad as all three combined. Right? Lashon Medaberes Gedolos, the Lashon is just as bad as all three combined, which is why our Golus is the longest and it's the most bitter. The point is that Golus Bavel, is associated with Avodah Zarah. So, it's this Golus, this exile that's about to begin on Asar B'Teves, that's when they start knocking on the door. It's also very much connected with Avodah Zarah, because this is the beginnings of the Bavel Golus, the Avodah Zarah Golus. Now, right away, I'm starting to see a connection, at least to one thing. Dun. We said this is the Shevet of Dun. Dun has a very unhappy history with Avodah Zarah. Right? The earliest mention of this, I think you'll find in Parshas Lech Lecha, where it says Avram Avinu, this was in the war with the 4 kings and the 5 kings. At some point it says Vayirdof ad Dun. He ran all the way to Dun. Obviously Dun wasn't born yet, but still that portion of Eretz was called Dun because eventually, later on in history, Dun would, that would fall to Dun. And it says that he stopped running. And Rashi says, why did he stop running? Because he became weak because of the Avodah Zarah that would happen there. And I think it's referring to Avodah Zarah that happened in the days of Yeravam ben Nevat. The Egel HaZahav was erected in the tribe of Dun, their portion of Eretz Yisrael. Other mentionings of Dun and Avodah Zarah is the whole Pesel Micha story, which I'm not fully familiar with. I really should have brushed up on that, but there was this Avodah Zarah that I think a lot of people ended up following, and it was all coming from Shevet Dan. I do know that in Parshas Ki Seitzei, when we learn about Amalek attacking the Jewish people, the verse says, "Vayizanei b'cha kol haneches shalom acharecha." Who did Amalek attack? They attacked the stragglers behind you. And Targum Yonasan says, who is that? That's Shevet Dan. He says, why? Why? They were straggling because they were kicked out. They were booted from the Anan HaKavod. Why? Because they had this affiliation with Avodah Zarah. So, Dan and Avodah Zarah, it's a problem. This is an old problem. And so if we know that in the month of Teves, the Babylonian exile begins, and the Babylonian exile is the exile of Avodah Zarah, so then we right away can make that connection, that's why this has something to do with Dan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dan, the tribe of Dan, has a certain penchant or certain weakness, a certain proclivity for idolatry compared to the rest of the tribes. And we have this incipient exile that's happening now with the surrounding of the city. And Babylon, the first of the exiles, is corresponding to the transgression of idolatry. And therefore, it's no shock that we see, with Babylon and with the encirclement of Jerusalem, that the tribe of Dan is going to be affiliated because of the certain weakness that they have towards idolatry.
Right. Now, the other thing I would point out is that also might explain the Gedi, because so a Gedi is a baby goat. The adult version of a Gedi is a Seir. Now, Seir is explicitly used in the Torah as a reference to Avodah Zarah. I can't remember what parsha it's in. It's, I can't remember, but Lisboach la Seirim. Do you know this verse, Rabbi Will? Be you familiar?
Yes.
It explicitly refers to Seir as a reference to Avodah Zarah. So the goat is somehow associated with Avodah Zarah, so perhaps the Gedi as well, being the junior version of the Seir. And once again, we can make that connection between Dan, Gedi, and Bavel, all having to do with Avodah Zarah. But let's take this a little deeper. So we know that Bavel is now surrounding themselves around Yerushalayim. Bavel and Yerushalayim have a very ancient history together. And the first time you'll see them come up is at the end of Parshas Noach. At the end of Parshas Noach, we are taught that this anonymous group of people head out to build themselves an Ir u'Migdal, a city and a tower. And with it, they wish to challenge God. Right, V'nasa lanu shem. And as we know, and this is like one of the most famous biblical stories, is that the verse begins by saying they all spoke the same language, Lashon Echad, and then their languages got all mixed up, and the whole idea of languages really evolved from there, the fact that there's a diversity of languages in the world. And then the verses concluded that is Babel. That's why they got the name Bavel, because they were like literally babbling, right? They didn't know what they were saying because nobody could understand each other's languages. Very mystical story. But here's the point. The point is that the Sefer Beis Yaakov, I think that is from the Ishbitzer dynasty of Hasidus. He quotes the Zohar that says, what's this? Ir Umigdal, a city and a tower inside the city. So he says a very deep idea. He says that there was something very spiritually sensitive that was happening at that time. Avram Avinu, this is the end of Parshas Noach. Avram Avinu comes onto the scene, Parshas Lech Lecha, or really even at the tail end of Parshas Noach. They sensed the oncoming of Avram Avinu. Okay, Avram Avinu is about to happen. They knew in their heart that Avram Avinu has the ability to overwhelm everything they represent. So if they represent idolatry, evil, immorality, whatever it might be, Avram Avinu will come along and stamp it out of all of them. He will create this entity called the Jewish people, and the Torah will be given to them, and all that's good and holy and spiritually positive will evolve from that. So they wanted to nip Avram Avinu in the bud. And here's what they knew. They knew, and we're going to explain this in a bit, but they knew that the secret to the Jewish people and the secret to Avram Avinu's legacy lies in the Beis HaMikdash. You need a Beis HaMikdash for this mission to succeed. So what they did was they said, we're going to build our own Beis HaMikdash. That's what we're going to do. And so they said, we're going to make an Ir, a city, Umigdal, and a tower inside the city. Because the dynamic that the Beis HaMikdash has to function in has to be surrounded by a city, Yerushalayim, and then within that city, there's going to be this like concentrated burst of spirituality in the Beis HaMikdash. So an Ir Umigdal. That's the dynamic of the Beis HaMikdash, and that's exactly what they wanted to model their project after. And they were going to build their own Beis HaMikdash. But it wouldn't be a good Beis HaMikdash, it would be a bad Beis HaMikdash. Right? And with that, they would undermine everything that Avram Avinu was going to do. That is what they were doing. Okay. So they're trying to build a Beis HaMikdash. And who are they? They are Bavel. So here you have again, right, they become Bavel. That Bavel at its roots, right, the very conception of the nation Bavel is the kind of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. I mean, building a Beis HaMikdash that would challenge our Beis HaMikdash. So Bavel has this obsession with our Ir, with our city and our tower that's inside the city. The Ir Umigdal happened all the way then, and it's kind of happening again now. They're back at the Ir. They're surrounding the city, trying to get in for the second time. So that's really cool. Okay, but I want to understand this a little deeper. What does this mean? What does the Zohar mean when they say that, or what does the Sefer Beis Yaakov mean when he says that Avram Avinu was the very beginning of the Beis HaMikdash? I mean, a Beis HaMikdash wasn't built till thousands of years after Avram Avinu. So what I think perhaps it means is like this. Avram Avinu, in a nutshell, if I were to describe everything he accomplished in one word, that one word would be Echad. Oneness. The verse in Yechezkel refers to Avram Avinu as Echad Haya Avram. Avram was Echad. Meaning the whole idea of monotheism and the oneness of God was Avram Avinu's innovation, and that was his message that he spent his entire life trying to disseminate to all of humanity. Echad Haya Avram. Now, the Maharal tells us in regard to the Beis HaMikdash, I want to read to you his words, because I don't necessarily understand them fully. But he says, try to find this. I might not find it right now. But he says basically that the ability for the Jewish people to remain as one is dependent on the Beis HaMikdash. He says that it's through the Beis HaMikdash. Here, I found it. Yisrael misachtem al yidei Beis HaMikdash. The Jewish people become one via the Beis HaMikdash. Shehayo lahem kohen echad. They had only one kohen. Mizbeach echad, only one mizbeach, one altar. Right? V'nesra abamos. They weren't allowed to make any sacrifices outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Shelo haya pirud v'chiluk b'Yisrael, because there couldn't be any separation amongst the Jewish people. The Beis HaMikdash was the place where all the Jewish people came together, and the Maharal goes on to explain that that's why sinas chinam, hatred amongst the Jews, caused the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, because they were challenging the very purpose of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so Avram Avinu is Echad, and the Beis HaMikdash is what perpetuates that legacy, which is why I think the birth of Avram Avinu was the very beginnings of the conceptual construction of the Beis Hamikdash, because they both stand for the same concept. Does this make sense, Rabbi Wolbe?
I'm getting there. So there's a certain kind of consolidation or unification or unity that Abraham represents, and that, of course, relates to the unification of, or the idea of the singularity of God, that Shem Echad, there's only one God, not all the other powers, and that is, so to speak, the flashpoint between Abraham and the Babylonians and the temple and the later Babylonians, and that's the conflict that comes to a head in this month.
Excellent. Okay, but it gets even more specific, because if you look at those verses all the way back at the end of Parshas Noach, when it introduces these guys who are about to build this strange tower, this is how it describes them. Vehi kol haaretz safa echas udvarim achadim. And all of the land, all the people, spoke one language and words of one, very hard to translate, udvarim achadim, words of oneness. I mean, basically the point is that this idea of echad was very central to their entire culture. They were extremely united. They spoke only one language, they spoke words of oneness. Okay, they had this power of unification, of unity. And that is why there was a real power to their efforts. They could have done this. That's what I think. Meaning, they were about to build a Beis Hamikdash. Like, imagine if a group of random people from a random nation say, we're going to build a Beis Hamikdash. Would God go out of his way to say, oh no, I gotta mess this up because they have the power to destroy everything that's good and holy? Or would God say, do your thing, man. Like, I don't care. So, right? But he's not doing it. He's taking this very seriously. Hashem took this very seriously. And I think the reason is because, again, the Beis Hamikdash represents, its power is unity. Right? And they had that power. They had it. They were a very unified people. So they had the potential to use their unity and manipulate it to advance their agenda. So that's why, what did God do? What God did was a tit-for-tat response. He came along and said, okay, I'm going to destroy your unity. And what he did was, he took their language away from them, and he made multiple languages, and they no longer could communicate with each other, and they were no longer unified. So their entire threat is now gone. That's what was going on then. Now they're coming back. Okay, they're coming back on Asar B'Teves, and they want to penetrate the walls of the city of Yerushalayim and get to the Beis Hamikdash once again. Why are they doing that? They tried once before and they failed. Why are they doing it again? So here's what I think. This is really deep. The Sefer Karnaim, which is an old Kabbalistic Sefer, he writes a very deep thing. He says that Avram Avinu was born in the month of Teves. Okay? Just like me. Right? He was born in the month of Teves. And he said, there's a Pirish on the Sefer Karnaim, written by Reb Shamshon Ashtrapoli, also a very ancient, old Mekubal, who lived in the 17th century. And he writes that this is hinted to in the words Tikaver B'Seva Tova. Okay, I messed up. He does not say Avram Avinu was born in Teves. He says Avram Avinu died in Teves. He passed away in Teves. Says the Vedan Yadin that this is hinted to in the words Tikaver B'Seva Tova. So Hashem tells Avram, you will be buried in, Rabbi Wolbe, how would you translate Seva Tova? Like, good,
in a good old age.
At a ripe old age. A good old age, right?
Ripe, good old age, yeah.
Yeah, so you'll be buried there. So the words Tikaver B'Seva Tova, the Rashi Tevos are Taf, Beis, and then, Taf, Beis, and then Tes, which backwards read Teves. Okay? So Avram Avinu is being told you're gonna die in Teves. So he dies in Teves. Okay. Now, so much they say. I want to add on to that we know a principle that we always assume, unless we know otherwise, that a tzaddik, certainly a biblical tzaddik, dies on the day he's born. We learned this from Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hayom molu yamai ushnosai, today my days and my years are complete. The Gemara at Sota, page 13b, tells us that what that means is that I will be dying on the day I was born. I was born on Zayin Adar, I'm going to die in Zayin Adar. So I'm going to take the liberty to assume that if Avram Avinu died in Teves, he was also born in Teves. Okay, which means philosophically that in the month of Teves, this dark, dreary, boring month, is the birth of the patriarch of our people. Think about that, right? There's this very powerful energy in the month of Teves that terrified the Babylonians just like it did back in the day. Back in the day, the Babylonians, or they weren't even called Babylonians yet, they said, oh my gosh, Avraham Avinu is going to be born, we better stop this thing, we better build a Beis HaMikdash to destroy the Beis HaMikdash that he's going to build. And here they're back again in the month of Teves saying this power of Avraham Avinu is having a rebirth. We better stop this thing. So that is what I think is going on a deeper level of Asar B'Teves and the Babylonians coming back to surround Yerushalayim. Okay, so just to put this all together, we said that the Babylonians have they caused this like multitude of languages, right? They started off with Echad, they ended up with a whole bunch of different languages. And their whole agenda is to challenge Avraham Avinu. We also mentioned earlier that the Babylonians are very much associated with Avodah Zarah. The Golus Babel is the Golus of Avodah Zarah. So I want to make this clear that this is one and the same idea. The opposite of Avodah Zarah is Echad. When you believe in the unity of God, there is no such thing as Avodah Zarah. Okay? Shema Yisrael Shema Kino Shem Echad. The moment you abandon the mantra of Shema Yisrael, of Echad, of Achdus Hashem, you're already in Avodah Zarah territory. Avodah Zarah is multiplicity. In the Zohar, they say that a Rishus HaYachid is the Jewish people, Rishus HaRabim is the non-Jewish world. Multiplicity is a non-Jewish thing, because we believe in Echad. So, what's really going on with Babel, and the reason why the multiplicity of languages evolved from them, is because they are Avodah Zarah. So, Avodah Zarah can't ever really maintain a connection to Echad, which is why it fell apart. That's why they were not able to succeed. Right? So, the idea of Babel having numerous languages, or causing numerous languages to come into existence, is because they are Avodah Zarah. And numerosity is always going to be aligned with Avodah Zarah, whereas singlehood is always going to be aligned with Avraham Avinu and belief in Hashem. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the reason why it's crucial to understand that is because we're going to jump right now to the Targum Shivim, right? The story of this Melech Talmai telling the Sanhedrin that they have to translate the Torah into Greek. Because now we understand it. We understand what's going on. Because this Lashon Echad, this language that originally Babel spoke and that was taken away from them, that was Lashon HaKodesh. That was the only language that existed. That is the Lashon Echad. Lashon Echad doesn't just mean one language, it means a language of oneness. The language of God, the godly language, the one that communicates unity, is Lashon HaKodesh. What Talmai, this king, what he wanted to accomplish wasn't that he wanted a nice art scroll translation to help him understand the verses of the Torah better. What he wanted is he wanted to translate the Torah away and say, I do not want a Lashon HaKodesh anymore. I do not want it to be a part of the world of Avraham Avinu anymore, the world of Lashon HaKodesh, the world of Echad. I wanted to now enter the world of the 70 languages, and that's already the territory of Avodah Zarah. That's a territory of Babel. That is the world of Rishus HaRabim. That's what he was trying to accomplish. So now, do we understand why these two things are going together? Golus Babel, right? The Golus, the people who are built on the foundation of multiple languages, a world of languages as opposed to Lashon Echad, fits perfectly with the idea of Talmai telling the Sanhedrin to translate the Torah into Yavon. Rabbi Wolbe, does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense, yes. And I have some notes here that I'm amassing. So,
okay, so
I'm so certain that you're going to bring up some of the subjects that I'm just going to keep quiet.
Okay, probably not. But the one thing I wanted to point out, do you remember the letter? The letter of Teves was
Letter
ayin.
ayin, yeah.
Ayin, what's the gematria of ayin?
70.
70. And there you have it. The breakdown of the languages was it went from 1 to 70. And like what we mentioned earlier, I have something of an obsession with this dynamic of 1 and 70. Right? The Aleph is 1 and the ayin is 70. Kabbalistically, the degradation of Aleph, meaning when people act immorally, the Aleph, which is unity, which is Avram Avinu, it breaks down into an ayin and it becomes 70, but that's for a different time. But the idea is here that we see that Teves and Bavel and Dan, it all has to do with this abandonment of Echad, which right away brings you into the world of the 70 nations and the 70 languages, and that's why ayin is going to be the letter of the month of Teves. So far, we managed to resolve a whole bunch of things here. We know why it's done. We know why it's Gedi. We know why it's the letter ayin. We understand the connection to all of that and Bavel, and we understand the connection with all of that to Talmai, who made the Jewish people translate the Torah into a foreign language. Okay. Now we're going to have to talk about Ezra, and this is where things are going to get a little bit complicated. Are we okay with that?
Let's go.
Okay, so we mentioned briefly that this Lashon of Echad, the Lashon of Avram Avinu, is Lashon HaKodesh. Okay, that sounds fair enough. But what does that really mean? What is the significance of Lashon HaKodesh? Why is it why is it that fundamentally different from the other language? So here is a Devar Torah I want to share with you. This kind of stands on its own 2 feet. I shared this Shavuos time. There seems to be a contradiction in 2 Gemaras in Shas, 2 Gemaras in Talmud Bavli. In Shabbos, in the tractate Shabbos on page 88b, it tells us like this: Kol dibor v'dibor sheyatzu mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sheyatzu mipi HaGvura, nitzchalek l'shivim lashon. It says when God gave the Torah, every word that came out of his mouth was divided into 70 different languages. Okay, did you know that? Did you know that when you envision Matan Torah, I don't know, I just always thought it was in Hebrew, but that's not what it's saying. It's 70 languages were going down there. Okay, that's interesting. But here's the problem with it. The problem is that the Gemara in Sota tells us that it quotes the verse that says, Moshe Yedaber v'Elakim Yanenu B'Kol. Right, that's a verse in Yisro. Moshe spoke and God answered him with a voice. And the Gemara tells us in Sota, page 33, that what that means is that Matan Torah was given in Lashon HaKodesh. Because the word kol says the word kol, voice, means Lashon HaKodesh. The voice of God is Lashon HaKodesh. So is this not a contradiction? The Gemara in Shabbos tells us 70 languages. The Gemara in Sota tells us Lashon HaKodesh. How do you resolve these 2 quotes from the Gemara? So I think, and this is what I shared Shavuos time, I think the answer is like this. There was 2 stages. There was an initial stage of call, of voice. I mean, your voice preempts your words, right? It's if you just make a sound, that's not being enunciated. That's not right. So those aren't words. It's just a voice. Then along comes your tongue or whatever it is. It turns that voice into words. So the initial stage in speaking is going to be a call, a voice, and that is considered to be Lashon HaKodesh. Why? Because it's internal. Your voice is internal. It's before it was articulated and expressed outward. The internal voice of God is Lashon HaKodesh. Lashon HaKodesh is a true expression of divinity, which is why it's referred to as a call, a voice. Because it's one with God. It is, when God expresses himself, Lashon HaKodesh manages to encapsulate precisely what he's trying to say. Then the second stage is that it becomes dibor, words. Once it's outside of God, so to speak, he spoke it out, then it could be communicated or translated into the 70 different languages. So the words of the Lashon of the Gemara in Shabbos is very specific. It says, Kol dibor v'dibor sheyatza mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every word that left the mouth of God, nischalek l'shivim lashon, was divided into 70 languages. It's very clear. That happened at the stage when it left the mouth of God. The Gemara in Sota, it says it was Lashon HaKodesh, it's saying, Moshe Yadaber Velokim Yanenu Bekol, when it was still at the voice stage, when it was still internally a part of God, that was Lashon HaKodesh. Does that make sense? Or really do you understand how that resolves the contradiction?
Yeah. So there's the internal voice, which is the kol, the Hebrew word kol, and that's Lashon HaKodesh. And then it could separate and splinter into 70 different diburs or words or articulation once that voice is expressed.
That's right. So there's these two different functions here. There's kol, which is Lashon HaKodesh, and then there's dibur, which is the languages of the world. Now here's the thing. We don't oppose, like I told you, there's a wonderful company out there called ArtScroll. We don't oppose translating the Torah into different languages. What we oppose is divorcing those different languages from the kol. Okay? Meaning, it's fine to have Torah in English and Spanish and even Greek. So long as you understand that this is ultimately meant to bring you closer to the Torah's original form, which was Lashon HaKodesh, which was the kol. The Bnei Yissaschar talks about this idea. He talks about this idea of there being two things. There's a kol, and then there's dibur. And he talks about it very Kabbalistically. This is in Tishrei, when he's talking about Sukkot. I don't know if I have to get into everything he says there. He says that the kol is associated with the Shem Havaya, Yod Hei Vav Hei. The dibur is associated with the Shem Adnos, which is Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yod. He says when you bring them together, it brings happiness to your life. This is all very Kabbalistic stuff. But he does throw in there that it says, by Har Sinai, Kol Dvarim Atem Shomim. You are hearing the Kol Dvarim. So he says, it doesn't just say you're hearing the Kol, and it doesn't just say you're hearing the Dvarim. You're hearing the Kol Dvarim, the voice of the words, meaning there's a unity between the voice and the words, meaning there's a unity between Lashon HaKodesh and the 70 languages of the world. There's a unity between the Jewish people and the 70 nations of the world, right? There's a unity between the two different forces, as opposed to divorcing one from the other. So I have another Dvar Torah, which I wrote in a separate piece, which says that Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen represent these two different functions. Moshe Rabbeinu said, when God asked Moshe Rabbeinu to go and free the Jewish people from Egypt, you know what he said? What did he say? He didn't want to do it. What was his word? Lo ish devar malchi. I am not a man of words. I am not a man of words. I don't speak words. What does that mean? He doesn't speak words. So in school, when we were kids, we used to learn like his aral sefasayim. He had a speech impediment, which, that is what the verses seem to say, but obviously it's much, 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 much deeper than that. So I'll tell you what I wrote, and maybe I totally missed the boat here, but there's the Sefer Imrei Noam. He says that the words Omar Moshe, and Moshe spoke. Omar Moshe, Moshe speaks. He says that is gematria, the word shofar. When Moshe speaks, it's a shofar. It's a call. It's not words, it's a call. Meaning Moshe Rabbeinu was so connected to the internal depth and meaning of the Torah that he wasn't even able, at least he claimed he wasn't even able to articulate it outward and turn it into words. He wasn't able to translate it into words. For him, it was like a shofar. It was just like a call. And that's what he said. I cannot talk. Why? Because Omar Moshe. When Moshe speaks, it's not words. It's a call.
Isn't there a chazal that says, don't our sages tell us that there's Shechina medaberes mitoch grono?
Right, mitoch grono. Right. Like from within his throat. It's like, I never understood that. Like he's talking from within his throat, but that's what I think it means. Meaning like, it doesn't ever really leave him. Right? It's not like, it doesn't get translated away. He's one with his message, and he's one with God's message.
And therefore the dibur has to be outsourced.
Oh, but what does God say? God says, alright, you need dibur? Who are we going to call in? We're going to call in Aaron HaKohen. Aaron, the word Aaron is gematria devarim. It's just so fascinating. It's like one of my favorite gematrias. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Lo ish devar manochi. Hashem says, okay, I'll bring on Aaron. What's Aaron gematria? Devarim. It's like, you're lacking devarim? I got the devarim for you. Aaron HaKohen had that ability to communicate Moshe Rabbeinu's message, to take that call and break it down into dibur. That's Moshe and Aaron, and as we know, we really need them to be unified. Kol devarim atam shomim. If Moshe and Aaron were to have a divorce from each other, that would be terrible. Because then what would happen was, the devarim, the multiplicity, would be disunified from its original source. It would be the 70 languages no longer being connected to Lashon HaKodesh. It would be the 70 nations of the world no longer being connected to the Jewish people. It would really be Avodah Zarah, meaning it would be the idea of seeing a world outside that's disconnected from God, that's disconnected from the unity of God. So Aaron and Cohen and Moshe have to go together, and they do.
It should be noted that Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, starts Elah HaDvarim Asher Dibra Moshe.
Excellent.
So after Aaron passed, Moshe was able to.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the Medrash actually asks that question. They say, how can you say Elah HaDvarim Asher Dibra Moshe? Did Moshe not say Lo Ish Devarim Anochi? And they give a very mystical answer, a very cryptic answer. They say that his tongue was healed. I've written up about this in a different place. Anyways, here's the thing. Before we get to Ezra, I want to just flip right back to Talmai for a second. Talmai made them translate the Torah into Greek, but if you look at the Gemara there in Megillah, he has a very peculiar way of expressing his command. He says, Kisvu li Toras Moshe Rabchem. Write for me the Torah of Moshe your Rabbi. There's only one Torah, right? Why couldn't he just say, write for me Torah? So I want to suggest he was going directly to this point. The problem he had with Torah is that it was Moshe's Torah. It was coming from a place of kol. It was coming from that Omar Moshe, that kol shofar, right? That expresses and personifies unity and oneness. He didn't want that. He wanted you to rob it, steal it away from Moshe Rabbeinu, and write it for me. Let it become my territory. I'm fine with the Torah, so long as it's disconnected from Moshe. Because Moshe is just way too connected to God. Moshe literally only speaks the voice of God. I want a Torah that is already removed, a step up removed from God, right? Kol dibur v'dibur sheyatza mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want it to be removed from God and be disconnected from the kol that Moshe represents. That's why it says, Kisveli Toras Moshe Rabchem. Okay, but let's move along to Ezra. Ezra's a fascinating individual. Here's how the Torah introduces us, how the Navi introduces us to Ezra. In the 7th parak of Sefer Ezra, it says, you've never seen anything like this. It says, Ezra ben Sharia, ben Azariah, ben Chilkiah, ben Shalom, ben Tzadok, ben Achitov, ben Amaria, ben Azariah, ben Mariavas, it just keeps going and going and going, all the way till ben Aaron HaKohen. I have never seen such a long list of ancestors, being lined up in the Torah. Have you ever seen that? Like, it's sometimes see 1 generation, 2, 3. This is like 10. This is 10 generations. I think it is 10. So what's up with that? Going all the way to Aaron HaKohen. Like, why stop? Just keep going. Go all the way to Adam Rishon, right? So the idea is like this. The Kabbalists tell us that Ezra wasn't just a descendant of Aaron HaKohen. Ezra was a Gilgal of Aaron HaKohen. Okay, and that's why it's important for the Torah to show you the lineage all the way up to Aaron, because he was Aaron. He was Aaron. He's a reincarnation of Aaron. Okay. So much so, says I think it's the Megala Mukos, I hope I got that one right, that he says, we find Moshe Rabbeinu daven to go to Eretz Yisrael. He says, why did Aaron HaKohen not daven to go to Eretz Yisrael? The decree applied to both of them, that neither of them were allowed entry. He says, Aaron HaKohen had no concern, because he knew he was going to Eretz Yisrael. Not this time around, but the next time around. When he's Ezra, he's going to be Olam Mibavel, right? Ezra was Olam Mibavel, and he went to Eretz Yisrael, so Aaron HaKohen had no fears. He was going to get there eventually. Whereas Moshe Rabbeinu, we don't find that. Pretty cool stuff. Okay. Ezra is Aaron HaKohen. Remember, Aaron HaKohen is the Devarim aspect here. But there's another thing we find out about Moshe Rabbeinu. About Ezra. And that is that he's super connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Roi haya Ezra shetinasin Torah al yado li Yisrael al malei kadmu Moshe. Ezra, it says, had the ability to give the Torah. He would have been able to give the Torah had Moshe not preempted him. Ezra was kind of like, he had this Moshe-like quality that he could have given the Torah. Just like Moshe. The Torah refers to the pasuk refers to him after giving that whole rundown and showing how it descends from Aaron HaKohen. That literally the next pasuk says, "Hu Ezra Olam Mibavav Hu Sofer Mahir B'Toras Moshe Asher Nasan Hashem Elokei Israel." He was Sofer Mahir. Rabbi Wilby, I don't know how to translate Sofer Mahir. He was like an extremely
a speedy scribe,
but it means something more than that. He was super diligent in the Torah of Moshe. Again, stressing the Torah of Moshe. What I want...
Doesn't it say that he was 120 years old when he died?
Yes, he was 120 when he died. I didn't manage to put them all together, but there are multiple other Maimari Chazal that show this connection between Ezra and Moshe. He's a Sofer Mohar B'Torah's Moshe. He could have given the Torah had Moshe not done it, which means, again, only Moshe was allowed to give the Torah. So if Ezra's giving the Torah, that means he's super similar to Moshe. So what I want to suggest is, here's the thing. We know he's a Gilgal of Aaron. That's what we're being told. But we also know that he's very diligent when it comes to the Torah's Moshe. Perhaps what this means is that Ezra personifies this connection between these two functions. There's this call, Moshe, and there's Devarim, which is Aaron. He says, I'm Aaron, but I'm going to be a Sofer Mahir B'Toras Moshe. I will never forget that the power of Aaron lies in his connection with Moshe Rabbeinu. The Devarim, the articulation, the communication of Aaron HaKohen is only valuable if it will ultimately bring you closer to the unity of the call of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Ezra has both. He's a Gilgal of Aaron, but he's very much connected and dedicated to Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, now, I didn't have time to get into this, but if I'm right, then there's something super spooky. Because the same Gemara at Sanhedrin tells us, Rabbi Wolbe, you're a big expert in Maseches Sanhedrin, so you're going to have to help me with this. This is what it says. It says, B'tchila nitna Torah l'Yisrael b'ksav ivri v'lashon HaKodesh. Originally, the Torah was given to the Jewish people with ksav ivri, right? That's just some style of writing, and in Lashon HaKodesh. Chazra v'nitnis lahem b'mei Ezra. In the days of Ezra, it was given again. B'ksav Ashuris, in a different style of writing, Ashuris, v'lashon Arami. And it was given in the Lashon of Arami. That's like, Targum Onkelos, Aramaic. Okay, so the Torah in the days of Ezra switches languages. I don't even know what this means. This is a complete enigma. I don't even understand what that means. It says the Gemara, Biraru lahem liYisrael. Ezra went ahead and he chose for the Jewish people Ksav Ashuris v'Lashon HaKodesh. He rejected Lashon Arami, and he opted only for Lashon HaKodesh and the Ksav Ashuris. Doesn't this sound like exactly like what we're saying here? Like in the days of Ezra, I don't even know what this means. There was like another giving of the Torah, this time in a different language, and Ezra says, no, I don't want that. I only want Lashon HaKodesh. I mean, well, we gotta look deeper into this Gemara. I didn't have a chance to delve into it. But it sounds uncannily like the ideas we're discussing here. That, like, when you have Ezra, when you have Aaron HaKohen, there is a danger of the Torah switching languages, because Aaron HaKohen has that ability. But Aaron HaKohen didn't use it the wrong way, used it the right way, used it to always bring you back to the source. And Ezra did the exact same thing, right? The Torah is once again given, this time in Aramaic, and he's like, no, I don't want that, I only want Lashon HaKodesh.
Well, it might have to do perhaps with the second acceptance of the Torah in the times of Achashverosh. Jewish people reaccepted it, and that's, right afterwards comes Ezra to rebuild the temple. So maybe that's what it has to do. But you should know about this particular subject in the Talmud, there's literally an entire book written about it.
Oh, yeah?
Rabbi Reuven Margolis wrote a book about Tzav Ivri and Tzav Ashuris and, Assyrian script and the ancient, they call it like Paleo-Hebrew script. So there's a lot of literature about this. And it is very confusing. So. Okay.
Anyways, I don't know. I just saw that go around. I'm like, I gotta quote this because it just sounds too similar to everything that we are discussing. Okay, so I think we're basically done here. So we have these three events. All of them appear, at least according to our theories, that they have this common theme. They're all the idea of a world of multiplicity, which is a world of Avodah Zarah, a world that rejects the oneness of God, trying to take over a world of unity. So let's just review them. So it's the translating the Torah away from Hebrew. Okay, translating the Torah away from Hebrew into a different language. And again, not doing it for the sake of understanding the Torah in its original form. Doing it for the sake of creating a new Torah that's divorced from its original form, right? Then there's the death of Ezra, right? The death of the one who personified the connection between Dvarim and Kol. Then there's Babel, this people who created this whole mess in the first place, coming back to take over Yerushalayim, to destroy the base of Mikdash, which the Maral told us is the source of all Achdus. We said that Teves is the Shevet of Dan. Dan, we know, has this ugly history with Avodah Zarah. It's a Gedi. A Gedi, we said, is possible. I haven't yet found an exact proof, but we know that a Seir is Avodah Zarah, so a Gedi is likely connected to Avodah Zarah. It's the letter Ayin, which is 70, which is the 70 nations of the world. And then we mentioned that it's so this we didn't get to yet. Gadlu Lashem Itu Unaroma Mashmo Yachtav. Here's the thing. The Shabbos before Pesach is called Shabbos HaGadol. Why is it called Shabbos HaGadol?
All kinds of reasons.
But one of the main reasons is because they tied down the sheep of the Egyptians on that day. Right? They tied it down. Now what's the big deal? The sheep of the Egyptians was their Avodah Zarah. They worshipped the sheep. The day when you tie down their Avodah Zarah, when you conquer their Avodah Zarah, it's called Gadol. There's greatness. God has become great. Because the more Avodah Zarah in the world, the less revelation of God there is in the world.
Right, and Abraham corresponds to Hakel HaGadol, right?
Excellent, very good. Abraham corresponds to the Midah of Gadol. And I think, partially, maybe the reason is, because who is the ultimate destroyer of Avodah Zarah? Who picked up an axe and chopped up the idols of his father's idol shop as Avraham Avinu? So Avraham Avinu is Gadol because he's the one who destroys Avodah Zarah and brings out that much more godless, that much more greatness of Hashem. So the verse of Teves and the theme of Teves is Gadlu Lashem Iti Unaroma Mashmo Yachtav. Let's knock this Avodah Zarah out of ourselves and make God great once again. And that's it, folks. I do want to say, this is still kind of negative, and I haven't worked on the positive part. What was going to help me out with it? Meaning, the whole idea, let me just point something out. Done. We're really hitting on done this time. But you have to realize something. Done is very, very special. Done is very special because the capital of Avodah Zarah, one of the great Avodah Zarah people of our history is Esav, right? Now, who killed Esav? You know who killed Esav? Chushim killed Esav. Who's Chushim? Chushim is the son of Dan. Chushim ben Dan. Another thing, in Parashat Vayechi, when Yaakov gives the brachos to all of his children, when he comes to Dan, he says, Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. I see Mashiach here. Okay? Says Arizal, Chushim in the Torah is spelled without a vav. It's the same letters as Mashiach. Dan is very much connected to Mashiach. Dan has the power to destroy Avodah Zarah. He killed Esav. So, this is something we can discuss. I didn't really delve into it, but it's his very weakness that is his strength. Meaning, there's a reason why the Shevet of Dan is succumbing to Avodah Zarah every now and again. It's because the power to destroy Avodah Zarah is really his. Which is why their urge and their temptation is that much harder. Now, why Dan, of all people, was chosen for that role, I don't know. But I guess what my point is that it's the month of Teves. That means we have that power. We have the weakness, but we have the power as well. The same way it was the son of Dan who overcame Esav, so too it's the month of Dan, maybe, that will allow us to overcome Esav. And just like this was the very beginning, the first stage of Golus, of the 4 exiles, the first stage of the first exile happened in Teves, maybe the first stage of our ultimate exodus will happen in Teves. And we hope that will happen really soon.
This is obviously incredible, and I want to thank you for doing all the heavy lifting. I did jot down some comments that I have over here. Maybe I'll share them with you.
Sure.
So first of all, just basic. Esav, you told me Esav is Avodah Zarah, and he's also called a Sa'ir, right? That already the Medrash connects the Sa'ir to the Sa'ir, which is the same letter spelled, the hairy one. Esav was Vayetz, he was very hairy, versus and that's also the term for the goat. So of course that's just to wrap up that point. But I was thinking, first of all, didn't we write the Talmud in Babylon? Isn't there the Babylonian Talmud, which is not written in Hebrew? It should be noted.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that connects. It's almost like us taking upon the quality of Bavel, of Babylon, which is the idea of having all those foreign languages, but kind of usurping it or commandeering it, expropriating it for our benefit to actually explain the Torah of Moshe in a sanctioned and justified way.
Excellent. So yes,
Maybe.
Absolutely. I heard a full share on this from Rabbi Kiva Tatz, who speaks about this idea. He puts the two things together. Avraham Avinu being born in Babel and the Talmud being written in Babel is all this idea of putting the fragmented pieces back together again. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Now, Chushim, it should be noted, the one who killed Esav, he was deaf, but I think he was also mute. So I don't know how that connects to the idea of Kol and Dibur, and somehow we have this deaf mute who's the one who's going to decapitate Esav. Another thing, if Abraham died and was born in the month of Teves, we know that on the day that Abraham died, Jacob is making his nizid. He's making his lentils. And that's when Esav comes and says, I'm going to die, right? Why is he going to die? Rashi says, because of the temple. So again, we see that overlap of the temple. And he forfeits his birthright and he yields it to Jacob in this month, according to your calculation.
So it's actually better than that. So it's not 100% clear when Esav was killed, but there's very strong evidence that he was killed on Rosh Chodesh Teves. I think I'll tell you why. Because the Masorah, the tradition is that Yaakov died on Sukkot, because the verse says Yaakov nasa Sukkosa, which is obviously not referring to actual Sukkot, but it's okay. Now we know they traveled for 70 days. 70 days from Sukkot is Chanukah, okay? Right? Because 70 days from Tesla Tishrei is Chafei. And then it sounds like there were 7 additional days, if you read the verses in Vayechi.
Goren HaAtad.
Yeah, in Goren HaAtad. So 7 additional days from Chafei will get you to Rosh Chodesh Teves. According to that, the day he was buried, we know is the same day that Esav was killed. Esav was killed on Rosh Chodesh Teves. So there you have it. It's amazing, Rabbi Wolbe. He says, I'm going to die, and he dies that day. I never thought of that. That's incredible.
Now, I also noticed when we talk about Kol, it does attribute Kol to Jacob, right? HaKol Kol Yaakov. And I wonder perhaps if maybe Yaakov's alter ego or his other persona as Yisrael is somehow the way to get both of them in one. Maybe. What else do I have over here? Jewish people in Egypt, they didn't change their language.
Very good.
The fidelity to the language.
Very good, right?
And I was thinking as well, we know that when Jacob spent the night on Temple Mount, all the stones coalesced into one. And that reminded me of the idea of the base, that's Temple Mount, and that's the idea of all the various different forces
that's right.
uniting.
It's not just Temple Mount.
It's like the opposite.
Right. It's not just Temple Mount. That stone we're taught is the Evan Shasia, which the whole base of Mikdash was really built upon. So it's built upon that foundation of unity. Excellent. Anyhow,
this was it's exquisite. I absolutely love it. I feel like there's a lot more here.
Oh, come on. There's got to be.
But it's it's enough to work with until next month. You were a little bit uncertain about Teves. There's nothing going on there. But I guess next month we have Shvat, and of course there's Tu B'Shvat.
Yeah.
Which I know you have a lot of Torah on that, so it should be easier to do that next month. But I want to thank you for sharing your brilliance and wisdom with us. And I'm looking forward already to next month, the month of Shvat. Your email address, all the questions go to Rabbi Botnick. Don't ask me any questions. I just
forward them to Rabbi Wolbe.
It's too mysterious for me. But botnicksm@gmail.com. My email address, but don't email about this because it's too mysterious, it's too difficult, it's too advanced, it's just way above me. But thank you so much for joining us. And until next month, I hope y'all have a fantastic month.
All right. Thank you so much, Rabbi Wolbe.